know who we are,
Yeah.
define success, right? Create micro actions, measure progress, celebrate your wins. All right. Welcome to Money Therapy. My name is Brandon Chasteen. I'm one of your hosts, and this is another host here, Bill McGill. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Bill Miguel, welcome back, everybody.
We're excited to have you. Bill, what are we talking about today?
Today, we are talking about habits and how they affect our money routines and our progress with money, if you will.
Nice. And so habits, money progress, my brain's spinning. I feel like we have talked about some of this stuff in the past, but I do think I'm actually working on some stuff right now where I think probably one of the top 5 most important things in building wealth. One of the I don't know. We talk a lot about financial vital signs. I think one of the things that is a foundational kind of cornerstone piece to wealth building is being able to define and understand who you are as a person,
Yeah.
knowing yourself. Um, Bill, you'd mentioned a little bit about this in pre-show. Where do you want to start this conversation at today?
Yeah. So I just want to kind of set the scene, if I can, for a couple minutes here. Basically, what's been rattling around in my head recently is I read the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, and I also saw basically a presentation that he gave on YouTube. And what I thought was really interesting and how it ties into personal finance, basically, he gives advice that can tie into any part of life, which is really nice. But he talks about how to build good habits. And there's a couple of key concepts in the book that are important to understand. One is that um, little habits on a day to day basis actually, every habit that we have compounds over time. And so don't take necessarily the little habits for granted because those are going to compound and actually shape a big habit. So, for instance, what he was talking about, one of the concepts in the book is he would rather get 1% better every single day, towards a goal, than he would rather be 100% better absolutely the next day because one is infinitely more sustainable than the other. And the example that I love that he uses is he talks about the French cycling team who got a new coach in 2016. And historically, the French cycling team, especially the Tour de France, had struggled. And this coach came in with a new concept of, hey, we're not gonna try and change and overhaul everything right away. We're gonna try and get 1% better every single day. That's our goal. And what they did, they changed aerodynamic seats and wheels and, made bikes lighter. Every team does that, as technology gets better and bikes and the sport, adapts and changes. But they were doing things like finding the best massage gel that promoted the best muscle health, quicker and better healing for their cyclists, and even down to like how to wash your hands correctly. So they spent like an entire day teaching their cyclists how to actually wash their hands correctly, with the idea, of course, to stave off infection or getting colds, which infected with training, and all those things. And basically, over the last, I think over the last 5 years, they've won the Tour de France like 3 or 4 times. He thought that all these incremental changes would in 5 years pay off, and they ended up paying off in 2 years. And so he uses that throughout the book as kind of a basis of, when you're trying to accomplish a big goal. And I'll kind of introduce maybe a personal finance touch here. Maybe our goal is to track our spending over a month period. He said you need to break that goal down into very, very small incremental doable parts. He uses what he calls the 2-minute rule, which just basically helps you get it down to as small as you need to get it in order to do the first step in the entire sequence in under 2 minutes. So, for financial advisors and advising our clients, that might look like, hey, instead of focusing on tracking spending for an entire month, we're just going to look back on our day at the end of the day and write down exactly what we spent our money on and how much it was. Like, that's all we're going to do. So that's a little example. And what he's trying to do with paying attention to these little tiny habits and using these little tiny habits as building blocks to create a very sustainable, solid, good habit is he throws in this concept at the end of it. All of his arguments in the book lead up to this concept of identity change. So, for instance, if you're a person who, hey, I need to lose weight, I need to lose 20 pounds. The goal should not be to lose 20 pounds. The goal should be, I am becoming a person that takes care of their body. I'm becoming a person that exercises regularly. I eat good, lots of vegetables and healthy things for me on the regular basis. And, you'll look up in a year or two and you've lost 20 pounds. And so that's kind of an example of how we need to reshape and rethink. And this got me thinking to personal finance. Like I said, tracking our spending. If we're a person who wants to save a bunch of money over our lifetime to prepare for, maybe retirement, that's a habit that is built over time by maybe tracking your spending, every day. And how do we do that? Well, tonight before I go to bed, I'm going to look back on my day and write down everything I spent money on. If your goal is to read 3 books a month, that shouldn't be your goal. Your goal should be, okay, I'm going to put a book on my pillow and keep my phone out of the bedroom so that when I go to bed, I'm going to at least try and read 3 pages before I go to sleep. And then that builds and that builds. And before you know it, you've become a reader. You're not somebody who reads 3 books a month. You're a regular reader. And so that's kind of the overall concept I want to dive into. And, also with an emphasis on how we help clients kind of see that. We use a lot of numbers and we use the Elements app to talk about, what we call financial vital signs to show us these things. But how do we actually help our clients change and take on that identity of a saver, of an investor, all those things? So that's the concept for today.
That was a lot. You
It
just threw
was
a
a
lot
lot.
at us.
I did.
So a couple things that jumped out to me was the saying came to mind: most people overestimate what they can accomplish in a year and underestimate what they can change in 10 years. Um, that was one thing that I kind of heard several times over in what you were saying, is that when we try to set goals, change habits, or not even change habits, but create habits in our lives, um, the best practice is starting small.
Right.
Something else that you said that resonates with me, something I routinely apply to my life and coach clients in, is in goal setting. Um, like what is it that we're actually trying to accomplish, and how do I stack the cards in my own favor to create as much momentum and success as possible? You mentioned the 3-book goal. The
Yeah.
reality is if I set a goal to read 3 books next month, I can only be successful once. And I can also fail pretty quickly and fail, um, and have one fail. So it's a 50-50 split. Will I read 3 books or will I not? And if I start getting 2 or 3 weeks in and I haven't started reading at all, I'm probably going to give up on the goal, because there's no way I'm reading 3 books in the last 10 days of the month, potentially.
Right.
So how do we change that to create momentum, to give ourselves an opportunity to succeed 30 times over in 1 month?
Right.
Maybe it's just as simple as, hey, I want to become a reader. You talked about identity. I want to
Yeah.
be known as a reader. I want
Yeah.
to read more. So next month, my goal is to read something, whether it's 1 page or 10 pages or whatever. Um, I want to read daily,
Yeah.
right? Now, the chances of me now, could I still not read? Yeah. But if I succeed 29 out of 30 times, is that pretty good? That's pretty good,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I love how you broke that down. I thought that was really, um, I think that's really impactful. The problem that I see in this all the time is we as human beings are terrible of patting ourselves on the back and congratulating ourselves and celebrating victories.
Yeah.
We
And that's the
we
next step.
we sulk and we like wallow in our failures, maybe not even publicly, but they weigh on us a lot.
Yeah.
And then we're really, really also very bad at being clear on what success looks like and monitoring progress that we're making. So not only when we do happen to see progress, we don't congratulate ourselves. We're not proud of ourselves.
Yeah.
We're very, very upset and discouraged when we fail. We're very
Right.
quick to put all that weight on our shoulders.
Yeah.
Um, but also in that same sense, I think a lot of times clients don't even understand how to break down success into measurable pieces. You mentioned you were talking a lot about, or you talked for a moment about um, taking some of those things and breaking them down to that 2 minute drill, so to speak.
Yeah.
We have several episodes on micro actions.
Yeah.
We work a lot with our clients on, developing sprints. All right,
Yeah.
this is where we're going to work and focus all of our attention for a real short amount of time. Nobody can sprint 20 miles, so
Hmm.
we're on this marathon of life. But right now, we're going to really sprint it out and try to accomplish this quick.
Yeah.
But even if we're not sprinting, we can still break everything down into these tiny micro actions. But if we're going to create micro actions, we have to be willing to create like this we have to be able to define microscopic progress and
Yeah.
be willing to celebrate that for ourselves.
Yeah.
If we have
So,
this 10-year goal and we break it down into 120 monthly goals, obviously, if my goal is to, have $2 million in an account in 10 years, that's great goal, whatever. But maybe every month that means adding, a certain amount of money to an investment account that's going to grow at a certain rate. And obviously the progress is not going to feel as monumental as waking up one day and having $2 million. But I need to understand what micro actions, the micro progress that it leads to, and celebrate that stuff whenever I commit and do it.
yeah. So the book actually talks a lot about that. He said the thing that he says is, good habits are tough because they require sacrifice right now and they don't pay off until later. And bad habits usually give you something now and the consequences don't happen until later. So, for instance, like eating healthy or working out now stinks, right? But over the course of a year, you'll lose weight, right? And that's, it's delayed gratification. As opposed to if you eat a donut right now, man, is a donut good. But in a year, if you keep eating donuts, you're probably going to gain weight, right?
But
So,
this is where it comes down to defining who you are, right?
right,
To change who we are, I mean, for like a certain time of life, if you would have been like, Brandon, you need to work out every day, Brandon would have been like, no, that sucks. I don't want to work out every day. Right.
right,
I'd rather sit on the couch, watch a good movie, chill out, and eat some junk food. Like that's who Brandon was. But when Brandon changed his identity, all of a sudden the new Brandon was like, no, Brandon works out every day.
yeah.
Brandon looks forward to
So,
it. Right. So
yeah,
once we grasp that new identity, you don't have to follow the same rules that you used to. I just put a social media post out, I think last week, talking about how many times in your life, Bill, have you ever said something to the effect of like, man, if I was in charge for a day, this idea came up. We were talking about the election coming up, and we've all said it, right? Like, man, if I was president for a day, this is the first thing that I would do,
Yeah.
right? This is how I would handle it. This is what I would say.
Find
The
out where the
reality
aliens
is
are.
the reality is so many of us talk about, man, if I was in charge for a day, we're always looking at things that will probably not likely be in charge of in our lifetime,
Mhm.
but we're all in charge of our own life,
Yeah.
right? We're all the CEO of our own life.
Yeah.
So it's like, we all understand this idea of what it's like to have, like, we all either know somebody, or we've experienced it, or we've done it, fired someone, right? So we all get the concept of firing someone, right? There's a
Mhm.
liability that's being caused. There's the job's not getting done. So, hey, you're fired, with the intention of putting something else, a replacement in, that's going to do probably the opposite of what the previous thing was doing. So, when we start to form our identity, when we change our identity, when we embrace this new idea or develop, or whatever the case may be, at some point you got to fire the old things and
Yeah.
hire the new things. And
Right.
so, the Brandon that existed, that hated working out, guess what? That Brandon's fired. And also, hating workouts, you're fired. What's
Yeah.
hired is the Brandon that looks forward to the next workout. And that all comes down to that
Yeah.
identity piece.
Yeah. So I want to take a half a step back here, and then I want to kind of revisit the whole identity part, because this is another interesting part of the book, and then something came to mind while you were talking that I want to share as well. Um, in order to, it's kind of like a chicken and the egg thing. In order to form that new identity, you have to create a habit that's doable. And you said it yourself, like, Brandon working out every day was not doable for me. I couldn't do it. Right. It was too much. Right. And what's interesting about that, I just want to point out, is no one actually defined what working out means for you. Right. Working out for Brandon could have been going on a 15-minute walk.
Sure.
Right. It could have been an hour and a half weightlifting session. Right.
Sure.
So the one thing that came to mind, and I just heard about this. Have you ever heard of the 75 hard? You
Yeah.
ever heard of this?
Yeah. I've done
So I
that.
just learned about this, but for anybody listening who doesn't know, so the 75 hard is basically a challenge where you go 75 days without drinking alcohol, and you try and work out twice a day, and you try and read every day. And what's interesting, I was
Follow
thinking
a
about this
diet for
all.
75 days.
Yeah, so there's a diet piece as well.
Yeah, you got to follow
Okay.
any diet you choose for 75 days, and you have to drink, I believe it's a gallon of water. I think it's a gallon. That's
Okay.
what I failed. I've done this. I've tried this challenge multiple times. Failed
Okay.
every time, because by the eighth or ninth day, I feel like I'm drowning in water.
You're
This is
like you're dying.
impossible.
You're
Just,
waterboarding yourself.
that's honestly what I felt like by the end of
Well,
the
I
first
just
week every
heard.
time.
So I just heard those three things, which made
Yeah.
it sound a lot more doable. And
Yeah. Good luck.
what rattled around in my head was, yeah, no one set a goal of how much you have to read. And they're like, it could be a magazine article, it could be a 2
It is
second
10
Facebook
pages a
thing.
day, but you can read
Okay.
whatever you want. It is 10
Well,
pages.
so the guys that I heard it from, who were doing it all together. So for everybody listening,
I think they're doing
it's a
75
thing.
easy.
There you go. Well, you can, I guess, make up your own rules, it sounds like. Okay. So these people never define, because I asked, I said, well, how much do you have to read? How much do you have to work out? And they're like, there's no parameters. You just have to intentionally read something every day. It could be 15 pages, it could be a magazine article, and you have to work out twice a day, whatever that means to you. So it could be going on a 10-minute walk, like I said, or it could be a mile and a half, and it could be the 75 easy. Maybe we call it that. I like
I
that.
think they're doing the 75 easy. Just for all the listeners that might have done 75 hard and they're like freaking out. I have tried 75 hard. I drowned every experience.
Dude, who could do, and you're,
it's 45
military,
minute.
dude.
It's
That's
45
crazy.
it's 45-minute workout sessions. One has to be outdoors.
Okay.
So every day, rain, sleet, whatever,
doesn't matter.
at least one of those is outdoors. I've seen some people, or some people have, I haven't seen it. Some people have admitted to cheating, where they'll, like, it'd be pouring rain or freezing, sleeting snow. So they'll just open their garage door and work out, like, so it's
That's
still,
what I would do.
well, I'm kind of outside. But yeah, it does get, they do have, like, inside of, to make your point, they don't define what your diet has to be. They just say, follow a diet, commit to it.
Follow a meal.
So it can be like, I mean, your diet could be, hey, I just want to eat 2,500 calories,
Yeah.
You can read whatever you want, but I do believe it does have to be. You can go to the website, 75
Yeah.
hard, I think challenge or something like that. I don't know what it is, but Google it. It's
Yeah.
all there. And
Yeah.
I think we should all readily accept your willingness to challenge this, Bill. I think by
Well,
next podcast, I want to hear what it feels like to be 7 days into this. So
oh
I'll
my
be
God,
waiting.
it's so hard. So the point I'm trying to make here is, goals and where you want to get to, I think become laser focused after you get started. And so you just have to figure out how to get started going in some direction that you deem as being a positive thing towards your goal. Right. So, maybe like as far as the 75 easy goes, like if you're a person who hasn't done anything, if you go into a 70, if you actually tried to do Brandon's parameters of 75 hard, you're going to wind up in the hospital probably. Right.
Not Brandon's
So,
parameters. No, it's
okay,
just
well,
the parameters.
okay. Well, the parameters, you're probably going to end up in the hospital if you just get off your couch and try and go do this thing. Right. So I think the precision of, like I said, you had, retiring with $4 million. I think that becomes into precision focus only after you have actually been saving and investing for forever. And so I want to give people like I want to give them some practical tips here. And we totally went off the rails and I completely lost my train of thought. I was going to tell you about that and then I was going to tie it back into the identity thing. But in order to get to the identity change, you got to, start with something small and something that's pretty broad. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. Something that's pretty broad. And then to help is find out ways to positively reward yourself as you go along. So one of the things in the book, again, we can brainstorm about what else to be doing, especially on a personal finance goal. But let's stick with this concept of our personal finance, of tracking your spending for a month. Let's do that. So maybe our first goal then is to, again, for the day, write down exactly what we spent and how much we spent, right? Well, if I do it for this day, let's say I do it before I go to bed or in the middle of the day, you pick the time, and I actually did do it. He suggests getting out like a big calendar, something tangible, and actually making the X or the big check mark on the calendar. He said just as simple as like making a to-do list and crossing things out. It works just as well to have a calendar and give yourself an X marks the spot or a check mark of I did it. Right. And then he says, so then, when the next day happens and you do it again, and now you have two check marks, now the goal becomes to not break the chain. Okay, so now, imagine you have 5 or 6 X's or check marks on your calendar and you're coming up on it. Now you're like, well, I just don't want to break, like, I've got a lot of momentum here going. I don't want to break this, right? I don't want to break the chain. He also has another rule that says never break the chain twice. So, like, if you fail on one day, kind of what you were talking about, like, if I try and read 3 books in a month, I have a lot of opportunity to fail. Whereas if I try and read 3 pages a night, yeah, I may have failed last night, but you can get back on the horse the next day. It makes it easier. And so within that same concept is never allow yourself to fail or break the chain twice. So if I forgot to do it yesterday, I got to do it today so I can put a check back on the calendar. So I'm sure there's plenty of other ways, but you also got to be careful. Like the one thing that I personally do is like when I get a really good workout in, like I want to eat like a cheeseburger. It's like that's
You
not what
earned
we're
it.
trying to do, right? That goes backwards. That's not a good way to do that. So within those check marks and within those tiny little things, by the end of the first month, you've really built up momentum to go into the second month. And then your cycle is okay, you know, imagine you get to the end of the second month. I don't want to break this chain. I've got a lot of momentum going. And so that makes it easier for you to keep going. And then before you know it, you're somebody who's putting money into an IRA, into a 401k. You're quickly becoming a saver and an investor that's going to get you to $4 million at retirement one day. But it all
Okay,
started
so
with
hold
you
on.
just looking at your finances.
We got to pause for a second because I don't know if we disagree with one another here.
But I'm
But
all fired up. We can't.
well, one of the you're definitely running down some hardcore rabbit trails today, but that's all right.
That's
I
good. That's why we're
what I
here.
want to okay, so you're basically telling me that I need to create this whole like kind of checklist, to-do list. Like what and then eventually I'll become who I'm trying to be. And
Well,
I
not a whole
almost
checklist, but
disagree.
pick out a goal and then identify the habits that would make that goal possible, and then break that habit down into the smallest piece that you can to help yourself get started to creating
Yeah,
that habit that's going to
I
reach the
think I
goal.
want to challenge the notion though that you get started before you understand who you are and who you want to be. Otherwise, sometimes I think people come to me all the time with with very good goals.
Yeah.
So many times we do this like intellectual borrowing thing where people are like, "Oh, I'm going to meet with a financial planner, so I got to talk about retirement." And I get down
Right.
and we start talking about retirement planning goals, and then I'm like, "Do you guys like? You just said that you don't even care to retire. You want to work for as long as possible."
Right.
Like, well, yeah. Like, so why are we talking about retirement right now? It sounds like there's a million other things that we could be focused on,
Right.
right? Like, what is your identity? Who are you? And so let's not just throw a bunch of darts at the wall and hope we end up becoming the person we want to be. Let's start
Sure.
by saying, this is who I am. This is who I want to be,
Hmm.
right? This is where I'm at. And inside of like, if I know the person that I am and I can fall in love with the person that I am, might there be attributes of the person that I inside of who I am, I can be compassionate, I can be patient, I can be, intelligent, I can be funny, I'm definitely can be loving. I need community. Like all
Sure.
these things. Now, do I function in that space every day? Absolutely not. Right? There
Right.
are days when anger, frustration, exhaustion, like all these other things become the driving force behind my behavior that day. Right.
Right.
So the question is, how do I have more days like optimal Brandon, the Brandon I
Hmm.
am, the Brandon I want to be as much as possible? And how do I have less days like enemy Brandon, right? The person that pulls away and distracts from me being optimal,
Hmm.
right? And then in those attributes, how do like of the attributes that I want to be at my prime, be at the best every day, like what are the attribute muscles, the behavior muscles that I need to exercise every day,
Hmm.
right? Once I start understanding this, then I can say, okay, where does optimal Brandon thrive? Who's around when Brandon's at his best? What's Brandon
Hmm.
doing? What pulls out the best of Brandon? Now, all of a
Sure.
sudden, that becomes the goal. So I can quit talking about retirement. I can quit talking about my my daughter's 529 account. Like I can quit talking about, you know, getting an inheritance, like getting my legacy, my wealth from me to my daughter, and I can start talking about the things that matter. Brandon needs to be, around people, around kids, or around, his kid and around the family and friends that he loves the most.
Sure.
Really enjoy going to the golf course. Really, like I'm looking forward to that. The weather's starting to get really nice, right? So if
Right.
I can start saying this, okay, well, it sounds like Brandon, what you need is more of this. How do we get there? How do we put more of create a bigger environment, more present in your life? Because when Brandon works, 18-hour days all week long, he's tired. He doesn't
Yeah.
go out on Saturday and spend time with his daughter like he should, right? He
Yeah.
makes excuses to skip the date night. He does all these other things. So, okay, it sounds like we need a better work-life balance, right? We need to make sure that you're getting the rest. And if you want to have energy, guess what? You got to go to the gym.
Yeah.
But now, like I think the thing that I want to stress here is that the optimal Brandon, he like I want to be in the gym every day because
Hmm.
optimal Brandon in the gym means he gets to live and enjoy life longer, and it means he has more energy to be around family and friends and be present in those situations, which means everything to me, right?
Sure.
So Optimal Brandon doesn't have to go to the gym, right? It's not, and I think I just words matter, and you didn't suggest this, so I'm not saying that you did, but
Yeah.
I think innately sometimes when we think about a checklist, it's a to do, like we have to, but if we get in the right brain space and we're designing the the behaviors and the habits that we need, if we're doing this the right way, it's not a checklist of things I have to do, it's a checklist of things I get to do. But again, we are always going to be in that space of, oh, Brandon has to, like, I have to read 3 pages tonight, or I have to turn off the TV so I can go read for a little bit, or I have to, like, you know, give up my Saturday so I can, make sure I have the daddy daughter time that I'm supposed to have. That's destructive Brandon. Right? That's Brandon because of his circumstances, but Brandon because of calling, because of passion, because of who I am, who I've been created to be. Brandon
Mhm.
gets to turn off the TV and go read. Brandon gets to take his daughter out on Saturday night. So I really just want to stress that point, that
Yeah.
when we're creating this stuff, if we understand who we are, what we're created to be, what we're called to be, all these the purpose of our life, it becomes much less about what we have to do and much more about what we get to do. Because if you focus, I would bet anybody listening to this podcast, I would bet any single listener, there's not a bone in your body that wants to be destructive, that wants to be toxic, that you wouldn't be listening to this podcast if you didn't want to be a better version of yourself.
Right.
Right? We need our finances to mirror our habits, who we want to be. We need our finances to support and supplement and perpetuate the goodness that we're willing to give away. So in this case, we're like, oh, hey, I want to listen to this money podcast because I know if I get my finances right, I'll be able to do more of the things I love and the things I love around the people I love. And that creates joy and happiness and gratitude. And, we can exercise the giving muscle and all this other stuff. So I just said
Yeah.
all that to say, know who you are, write that down, think about the attributes that make who you are the best version of yourself. Think
Mhm.
about how do we exercise those attribute muscles? What are the behaviors? What are the habits that can occur? And then let's starting to write down these checklists of things I get to do instead of things I have to do, because words matter.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think within your identity of who you want to, where you're going, what the goal is, who you want to be, the mindset is always very, very important. And even changing that, I get to do these things. I get to hang out with my family. I get to, go work out every day. I get to, whatever the thing is, that definitely helps. Um, and I think that you also need to have some grace with yourself. We say that a lot here, but life is about going out there and figuring yourself out to a large extent. You may have a goal of getting your business to a certain point, and you're like, your overall goal is, I want to be a successful business person, let's say. And then you've chopped down those goals to, or you've chopped down that goal to little tiny habits, and you think, okay, what the things that are going to help me achieve that goal are, reading every day, tracking my spending in my business, and working a lot, for a non-specific goal. And for Brandon, if Brandon works 18 hours a day, he's not great for his other parts of his life. And so life's about testing those limits and developing good habits towards a goal, but also within that is finding a balance. Because if you do go overboard and you do realize, okay, if I'm working 18 hours a day, I am not at my best in all these other areas. And part of who you are is to be a well-rounded person, be a good father, be a good husband, whatever that is. Those habits and those goals are going to make themselves apparent. Okay, in order to be a good husband, you know, I have to, I need to spend time with my wife. And so, we're through all the craziness of being a father and having a life, like, our habit is that we go on date night every Thursday night, no matter what. I am done working at 5, and I meet my wife at a restaurant for date night. right? And so you can build those habits in, and it necessarily doesn't, after a while, it's not a checklist. And if you make a checklist with 20 things, you're going to have that overwhelmed feeling a lot of the times of, holy crap, I got a lot of things to do here. But if you can break those atomic habits down into tiny little things, um, I think you'll find that it doesn't feel like a lot, especially when you just focus on one and then start building other good habits around it.
Yeah.
So with that to say, you can accomplish a lot of different things with little tiny steps all going in the same direction. So, and I think
Yeah.
that again, like, I think your goal, I still think your goal always starts out broad. It always starts out, I want to be a good business owner. Okay, well, what in the world does that mean? Right. And then over time, once you get sort of the basic goals down, we could say, like, okay, I'm in the office every day. I'm reading about what I need to learn about in order, in my business in the financial sector. I'm gaining clients. I'm doing a good job from it. My business is growing. Okay. Now you start to have, hey, I want my business to do this amount of revenue per year. Then I want my business to, like, if I ever want to sell my business one day, I want to build the revenue up so I can sell my business for $5 million one day. But it didn't start there. Like, I don't know anybody who's like, I'm going to create a business and sell it for $5 million one day. Most of the time it's, I want to create a business and be my own boss, things like that. So I want to stress that if you don't know exactly where you're going, that's okay. We inherently know what good things are for us. And if you can take a step back and look at your life from a different perspective and notice when you are at your happiest or at your best. My best is not when I'm working 18 hours. Okay, how do I build in other habits and goals to make sure that I am at my best when I am present doing the things that I love to do? So, um, yeah, I think, um, I don't know. I just think it's a great discussion. I mean, I think about in terms of actual practical tips that we can give the listener for personal finance. I mean, I think about automated savings, how easy that is to incorporate into your life. I think about the fact that if you have a 401k, most 401ks allow you to add 1% savings on a monthly or even yearly basis to get you to, invest more over time as you get used to it. Um, there's so many different, I want people to take this episode and really go home and look at their, you know, as we speak to the financial sector of our lives, like, really look at what is my goal and what are little tiny habits every day that I can do to help reach that goal someday. And again, how do I create a streak that provides momentum? Momentum provides motivation. And how do we get that steam train rolling down the tracks?
I would would just remind people that good habits can feel bad and bad habits can feel good. Um, I think that's important to know. I think that sometimes, if we're just not super clear on where the ultimate destination is, we can tell ourselves something is good and do good at it, um, and wind up where we don't intend to be. You're talking about that journey of a million steps. Well, if our azimuth is off at the very beginning, there's like a kind of a story about the plane that takes off in California and just like 3 degrees variance in traveling direction. The plane that leaves California could end up in Florida or New York,
Right.
with 3 degrees of error. So again, understanding all these things, bringing it all together, creating healthy habits. But I really do find a lot of value in what I deliver my clients. I'm very proud to charge my clients for the value that I offer them, in a sense, because I do think that one of the most beautiful things about my job is I can see where healthy habits have facilitated success, and I can see where bad habits have facilitated not success. And I can see where the wrong habits in the wrong places were just as bad as bad habits. And I can see where, people wind up in positions and spaces where they really never wanted to be in the first place. And I get to package that all together for all my clients and deliver 10,000 plus years of life experience, not my own, but an aggregate of all the clients that I get to be a part of their lives, and say,
Sure.
hey, like, yeah, everything about what you're, I mean, I'm talking to a new client right now, and she has all these great savings goals, all these great savings goals. I'm like, is that really what you want though? Like, no, there is none of what she's talking about is bad, but it's taking away from some of the things that she values and has said these things are important. So even though we're talking about good habits, even though her heart is in the right spot, it ultimately doesn't align with who she is and what she says she wants to be in her life. And I need to back her off and say, hey, look, we can actually create a healthy habit here that equally aligns with who you're trying to be one day and who you are right now. And
Right.
that's where the magic happens. Now all of a
Mhm.
sudden it's not something that we have to fight to sustain. It becomes who we are,
Yeah.
right? So that's really, I think, the biggest uh heads up is just understanding you put together a goal, or you create a habit. Not like, how good does Taco Bell on a Friday night feel when you're sitting on the couch watching TV? It feels real good, right?
Yeah.
It is not a good habit, right? So good
That's right.
habits, going to the gym every day, you can get sore, right? Like your second or third day into the week, and you're just like, you did legs yesterday or 2 days ago, and now you're it's hurting to get on that treadmill and run or run outside. Bad habits can feel good, and good habits can feel bad. So keep that
Yeah.
in mind. Just it's all about having the right habits, the right goals, and the right understanding of who we are as
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, and to wrap it up, the thing that's just blaring in my mind right now is like if you're confused and you're not sure, like get a professional in your corner, hire a coach, hire a financial planner, hire a CPA, get that team around you to show you if you're not sure the right direction to start off on or the right path to start on. You ask around, right? I mean, get that team around you, to help you set the goal, to then help you set the habits, to help you set, what are we doing today to make sure that we're going where we want to go. So with that, I
know
think,
know
oh,
who we are,
yeah,
define success, right? Create micro actions, measure progress, celebrate your wins.
yeah.
I think that's a good summary of the show.
I think that's a great summary of the show. Guys, if you want to, join us for next week, we'd love to have you. You can find us anywhere you find podcasts, Spotify, what is it, Amazon, Apple Music, Apple iP, Google Podcast, everywhere. If you want to reach out to us directly, go to harpethwealthpartners.com. You'll find both of our emails down there. If you guys have any questions you'd like us to address on the show, put it down in the comments section. We'd love to have an episode of just listener questions. That's our next goal as an up and coming podcast. So we appreciate everybody joining us, and we will see you all next week.
Later, guys. We hope you learned something valuable today. We appreciate you including us in your journey towards financial betterment. It is important to us that you know this is for educational purposes only and not to be considered specific advice for any individual listener. If something we discussed is relevant to you and you have questions about how it might be uniquely applicable to you, please discuss that with a financial professional, or, of course, we are happy to have further conversations with you about your specific questions, needs, or circumstances. We welcome you to reach out to us via our website, harpethwealthpartners.com, or by emailing Brandon at bmc@harpethwealthpartners.com. Securities are offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice is offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and Harpeth Wealth Partners are separate entities from LPL Financial. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not to be intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult appropriate qualified professionals prior to making a decision. Investing includes risk, including fluctuating prices and loss of principal. No strategy assures success or protects against loss. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Hypothetical examples presented are not representative of any specific investments. Your results may vary. We want to thank you for your time, and we look forward to having you back next week.